What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where we teach you how to grow on social media by talking to people that have actually done it. Today, I'm joined by Lindsey Metselaar. She's the host of the We Met at Acme Podcast. She's a food blogger with the Instagram DontExpectSalads, which has over 85,000 followers right now. She's also an entrepreneur. Lindsey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jacob. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And now where I want to start this conversation was with Stoner Girl Problems.
Oh, yep. Caught.
Yeah. So can you kind of tell me that story? Like what led you to start that?
Wait, did I tell you about that or you did your own research?
I did my own research.
And where did it say that I started that? I'm just so curious.
So we were trying to figure that out today. And I think you might have it listed on your website. I think.
Oh, very possible.
It might be like
very possible.
Under some like random page.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, when I was in college, my college roommate and I, would smoke a lot of weed. It's standard. And actually a bunch of our friends were like a group of, weed smokers who obviously still got really good grades. But on our downtime, that's what we would do. And at the time, Twitter was really growing. It was like, I graduated in 2012. So this was like 2008, 2009. And Twitter was very hot. It was before Instagram, and it was all about Twitter, if you remember that moment. Well, how old are you? I forgot to ask.
21.
Okay, so you don't remember that moment.
Yeah.
You were just born that year. But you can imagine. And, wow, you make me feel so old, like a guy. But it was all about Twitter, and there was a huge account that was growing every moment called White Girl Problems. Mm-hmm. And it was just a parody, a satire about how white girls are so just ridiculous with their problems. Like, I literally can't, or like, my candle, stopped. I don't know, just stupid shit that we would just laugh at so much. I want to pull it up and see if I can find an old sample tweet from White Girl Problems if it still exists. But it would be like, my rosé isn't cold enough, things like that. I would say that's probably one that existed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, they still have it. Okay, so can I curse on this?
100%.
So a sample tweet that actually was written is, my dad needs to shut the fuck up. My horse hates me. My jewel hates me. And if I get into one more screaming match on a first date, I swear to God. So that's actually really funny. I have to go through these again soon because I'm already laughing. But anyway, so we saw this and we saw how successful it was. And we were like, you know what, we could do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But we don't want it to be so niche and we weren't just white girls. And we didn't want to copy this person. So we decided to make Stoner Girl Problems. And the best thing and advice I could say for social media is be the first. If you don't see it there, then make it, And mm-hmm. we didn't see an account like that. And actually someone had the actual handle that's written out Stoner Girl Problems, but no one was tweeting on it. So we made our own without the E. Mm-hmm. And we just started tweeting and a few things. Now I'm pulling it up. Why isn't there an ATM in my apartment? What can we eat that we haven't yet? I wish my kitchen was in my room. Let's see. I just looked down and there was a joint in my hand, but I have no recollection of rolling it. Things like that. So we started tweeting these, what we would call Stoner Girl observations, and it organically, because at the time there was no such thing as sponsored content, mm-hmm. organically grew to 30,000 followers in a matter of weeks. And it was crazy. And then it was all the same people that were following the White Girl Problem were following this, and we would get retweets all the time from other people in college, and it kind of became a word of mouth thing. And then other friends of mine who were in college at the time would be like, "Oh, you're Stoner Girl Problem? I heard you were Stoner Girl Problems," mm-hmm. and it was really a cool moment. And then Instagram decided to ruin all of it.
Yeah, yeah. But were you expecting it to grow to that scale at all when you started it?
No way. Mm-hmm. And at the time, social media was still a weird thing. Facebook was definitely around, but no one, I mean, it wasn't the same kind of validation. Like, you get a few Facebook likes, but you didn't expect to get Facebook likes. Mm-hmm. That's more like, you know, the more recent generation, or the the kids right after us. Facebook was just to write on each other's walls at the time, and to be silly. And you never, especially on Facebook, got likes from people you didn't know. Mm-hmm. So this was the first time that we were getting this outside validation, and it was really shocking. We had no idea it would blow up like that.
Yeah, and you didn't really broadcast that it was you that ran this account?
We didn't really broadcast it. It was like, you know, 4 or 5 of us, and we would all retweet every now and then. We would tell people to follow it, but at the same time, it was, you know, about weed, which at the time was not as big as it is now. So we were like kind of hush-hush about it being us behind the account.
Yeah.
And a big thing that I think is, if you are someone that may be sensitive, or the content is sensitive, then you can hide behind an account as long as you're not doing something wrong or bullying or illegal. Mm-hmm. You don't have to say, like, this account is run by X, Y, and Z. You can just run the account.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And so what were you going to school for? Was it like something, not necessarily along the lines of social media, was it business or anything? Or
Yeah, it was actually. I was in communication school.
Okay.
So I was studying film and television specifically, but all my classes were about essentially how to communicate, which, funny enough, social media was not a class or part of it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, so what would you kind of do after college then? Because it was like, when you started StonrGrlProblem and saw it grow, did social media hook you at that point?
Yeah, I was definitely hooked, but I was like, well, what do I do now? How do I get paid for... I would always think to myself, if 30,000 people are following us, then can't 30,000 people just send us $1? Mm-hmm. Like, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Because then I would have $30,000 and I'd be set for the next year. But that didn't happen, and I didn't know how to make that happen. And it's funny, now if that were the case, I probably could have made it happen through a site like Patreon or something else. But at the time, didn't know what to do. I was like, you know, should we make an app? The rest of my friends who ran the account with me kind of fell off doing their own things, and I was a production assistant on a TV show, which sucked. So I was like, let me, you know, see if I can get this to be something. And I actually went to meet with a company that made apps at the time, because apps were like a big thing. People had officially switched over to the iPhone from the BlackBerry, and apps were like a big deal, but I had no idea what I wanted the Stoner Girl app to be. And like, it was really hard to figure it out. And then the fee to make an app was outrageous.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of just ended there as like a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think you only stopped doing it pretty recently, right? Like the Twitter page itself?
Yeah, only recently. And, you know, if every now and then, you know, a friend or someone has one of those funny thoughts, like, we would post it, but it hasn't happened in a while. We have a group chat that's like basically a graveyard now. And I guess actually we did the last kind of thing-ish that we did was PAX, which is a vape company, sent us a vape to post about on our Instagram.
Oh, cool.
But that was the last StonrGrlProblem thing, I would say.
Yeah, that's fair. And then I want to talk to you about DontExpectSalads.
For sure.
I love the name. Where did you kind of come up with that?
Thank you. So I have to give credit where credit is due. I actually started the account and I called it Food of New York.
Okay.
Which sucks as a name. And just is super basic and not really like me. But at the time, there were no food Instagrams when I started this. And it's so funny. I'm hearing myself and I'm like, I can't believe, like, if I'm a grandma telling this, like, there were no food Instagrams when I was growing up. But there really were not. Yeah. And so I was like, let me be the only food account of New York City. Mm-hmm. And so I called it Food of New York, and I started posting pictures and growing, like, really fast, which at the time meant 4,000 followers, which was a huge deal when Instagram was starting out, because there were, like, 10,000 users. And I went to an event with other foodies, and my friend Andrew, who's the co-founder of The Infatuation, a food review website, was like, you know, your Instagram is great, but the name sucks. And I was like, That's really mean. But, yeah, I think you're right. And it had said food of New York, and then my tagline was don't expect salads.
Okay.
So I was like, maybe I should just make it don't expect salads. And I did. And it's my friend Liz who was the one that thought of changing it to the official name. And she's great. And then ever since then, it was don't expect salads, essentially.
Yeah. Do you have any tips as to how you've grown it? Because in the intro I referenced, it's like over 85,000 followers now.
For sure. Well, you really have to commit to it. I really committed to it when I first started it. And I was posting 3 times a day, every day. And I was getting really good food content, going to restaurants that were hard to get into, that had dishes that were, Instagrammable. And then I kind of stopped doing that and getting like a life essentially and a normal job. And all these other food influencers were 100% doing that and nothing else. And they would continue to be consistent. And because of their consistency, a lot of the people I started out with, we started out both at 4,000 or whatever it was, are now at 300,000. And so I think it's really important to go all into something on social media if you want it to grow. And obviously not complaining, 85,000 is great, but it's only been growing recently because I got back into posting a lot. And now I'm trying to post, at least twice a day. But if you stop, it's like everyone else stops too. The one thing that I would say changed is that the algorithm used to not be a thing. And the algorithm has really hurt food influencers because you could post the most incredible piece of content, and if the algorithm doesn't pick it up, no one will see that. And so I see food influencers who have almost 1 million followers getting 500 likes on a photo, which is nothing if you compare the two. And so although that's the case, I think you just have to keep on pushing and keep posting regardless of that.
No, over the course of like this trip, we've heard that comment about the algorithm really screwing people over like quite a few times. Like it's come up quite a bit.
It's crazy.
So do you have like any tips though, as like, or not necessarily tips, but like in terms of your content, like how do you get fresh and new content twice a day when you're posting? For
sure. It's really hard, and I am like such a hustler in that I have 3 things that, I'm in the middle of at all times. So I actually don't have the time most of the time to go out and eat at new places. So I'm lucky enough that I have a lot of close friends who know I do this and have been doing this. And I have friends sending me photos of their food as well. So it's actually fun for my friends because, they aren't going to post the food to their own Instagrams, which aren't food related. And I give them credit, but I would never do what a lot of food bloggers and influencers do, which is repost people's food that I don't know, that they like worked really hard to post. And, there's a lot of people within the food Instagram world that look down on people whose entire feeds are reposting because it takes away from the actual hard work that people have done. And there's one in specific called New Fork City that is huge. And I think it's like over 1 million followers, and they don't take their own photos. They just repost things they find on the internet. So I mean, a lot of accounts do this nowadays with whether it's memes or food or, some people start like a couples goal Instagram and just repost other couples, and then they never have to do their own content. But I think it's really important to stick to being original.
One thing I was really curious about with Don't Expect Salads is, have you ever even one time posted a salad?
It's a great question. So I swear to you that I've never eaten a salad before in my life. Not only because salads are terrible in my opinion, but I am allergic to lettuce. Like, that's not even a joke. And the funniest part about that is I found out after making this account.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was almost like my body was always telling me not to do it anyway. But because, going back to how old I am, even though I'm only 28, by the way, but for some reason it's just in social media world, it's old, when I was starting out with my food Instagram, my friend Jonathan Neiman had just started Sweet Green. And he started it with a few buddies, and obviously you guys know now it's like a huge thing. I actually don't know. Is there a Sweet Green in Canada?
I don't know. I don't think so.
But you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard the name, yeah.
So he had just started out, and he was like, listen, I have this salad place. Can you post one of my salads? Like, it'll be ironic because you are called Don't Expect Salads. And I was like, okay, fine. And, you know, he's a friend. And so I posted a salad, and I said, I don't eat salads, but if I did, I would eat Sweet Green. And it was a salad, and everyone was like, what are you doing? But it was funny.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. With, like, the algorithm kind of screwing people over now, is there a time of day that you try to post for? Or does the algorithm really kind of eliminate the timing of when you post?
Honestly, I am so busy during the day that I end up posting a lot of the time at night before bed, and it's not a good idea.
No.
I always am like, fuck it, like people will see it in the morning, but they won't. Like, posting before bed is not a good idea. A lot of people go to bed much earlier. Posting between the hours of, I would say, 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. is your best bet.
Interesting. Okay, because when I talk to people, a lot of it's like 7 p.m. is like prime time.
Maybe for food specifically, but if you're just, a person trying to grow a personal brand, everyone's at dinner at 7 p.m. most of the time, and or have just gotten off work, or they're leaving a workout class, so it's a hit or a miss in my opinion. Whereas the hours that I gave you, which are 9 to 4, you can usually assume that people are sitting in an office scrolling. Yeah,
no, that's fair. And then I do want to talk about Lindsey's Lunchbox. We'll get to that in a sec. But you did have a job in social media prior to starting that, right?
Yes, I was in-house social at a few different startups. The last one was Go Butler, which was a tech startup where you would text into a system and basically have a quote-unquote butler respond to you and do tasks for you. And it was really exciting because it was my first social media position where I had a budget to work with. And at the time, sponsored content was very new, and you didn't have to write #ad. And you could really sneak in that sponsored content. And it was before the algorithm as well. And Fuck Jerry had just started really growing. I think he was at 1.4 million. Now he's at I don't even know, 26 or 30 million or more. And so I was like, he's the one that we need to work with. And I told my boss, who was young also, and he was like, that sounds like a good idea. We negotiated a deal, and we came up with a post for Fuck Jerry that was a Go Butler promotion post. And the way that I wanted it to work and created it with Elliot from Fuck Jerry was that I made sure that it was funny enough that it didn't seem off-brand for his posts. And so we made up a fake conversation between him and his butler, essentially, where, he wrote in and he said, hey, I need to get a present for my ex-girlfriend. And it's like, hey, sure, what can I help you with? And he's like, I want to get her a trampoline. And we're like, okay, great. Here's a few trampoline options. And he's like, okay, cool. And I wanted to have a note with the trampoline. And we're like, great. What does the note say? And he's like, since you've been jumping from dick to dick, here is, a trampoline or something like that. And it was so on brand for what he's already been posting, which is so important in social media, that nobody wrote on it, this is a fucking ad, this is bullshit. And in the caption, he was like, if you need your own butler, go to Go Butler, whatever. We ended up getting 60,000 followers from that one post.
Wow.
And we had a wait list of 12,000 people to get on Go Butler. And after that, I got reached out to all these different companies because I was listed as the social media person on LinkedIn, and they were like, hey, can you do our social media? Hey, can you do this? We'd love to hire you. And I was like, you know what? Let me start Lindsey's Lunchbox, which was basically the birth of that.
Yeah. That's really cool. I think that with like back to that fuck Jerry post is the fact that you made it on brand is the most important thing, because there's nothing worse than when I'm scrolling through Instagram and you see something that's just so off brand and you can tell that the company like just supplied them with the copy and the photo and everything.
Totally.
And
it's a lose-lose for everyone involved when you do something off brand. And I mean, I understand why some influencers do it. Everyone needs money, but you can speak up for yourself and say, listen, this isn't on brand. Can we make this more on brand? And hopefully if the company's smart, they'll say yes.
Yeah. And then so back to Lindsey's Lunchbox. What kind of services are you offering today?
For sure. So today I'm offering social media management for brands, usually specifically food brands, because that's my forte. I'm happy to help out with other brands, whether it's like startups or things like this, but I've been approached by real estate, for example, and I just don't know about real estate, so it's not really my thing. Or like fashion brands, I can't really help that much. It's more food and startups and things like that, and the food especially because I have DontExpectSalads, so I'm on both the influencer and the like marketing side, so that's really helpful. And I work with clients on a monthly retainer, and I post for them and strategize for them and create the content for them.
Yeah, without giving away like all of your secrets, but do you have any tips for businesses when it comes to social media?
Yeah, for sure. No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say just something that's like universal across the board.
Yeah. I would say keep it consistent and be open to criticism and feedback, as being in social media is actually one of the hardest positions in the whole company, because if you think about it, it's the only position that's forward facing, that everyone can see your work. Like, you can't see what HR is doing, you can't see what the CEO is even doing. All you can see is what's posted on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff. So if you fuck up, the entire world sees you fuck up. If you're doing well, the entire world sees you with that funny tweet. And, all the time there are memes screenshotting companies' responses to people on Twitter and things like that. And, like, that is one person that either gets fucked or gets raised because of that thing. So I forgot what the original question was. I feel like I just went on a tangent. But.
I was just asking like universal things across the board.
Right. So universally, I think, you need to really be careful and be open to feedback and be available really 24/7, which sucks. But if social media is what you want to do, like, the doors should never close, and there are always going to be clients and people reaching out, and like, it's your job to respond to them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree with always having to be on and just being one person. I feel like a lot of people don't think about that when it comes to social media, like with brands. Like, they just think it's Wendy's making a funny tweet, like,
right.
But working in social media, I always like think the way you do, where it's like there's probably just one person behind that.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
or like a whole team strategizing, going back and forth, but then the one person who posts, like, actually writes it and sends it, like, is completely responsible, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. And then so with your company now, is there a plan to scale it? Like, is it just you right now, or do you have like employees under you?
Yeah, so I had a few interns when I had 7 or 8 clients at the time. I was working out of a WeWork. And now that I have my own podcast and that's growing, and I'm able to make money from that, and like, not a full living, but somewhat of one, I have scaled it down to only having 2 or 3 clients at a given time, and it's hard for me to go above that. I could probably take on one more client at the moment, but I really want to, when I am working with a brand, I really want to make it all about them and like make them feel special and really live and breathe that brand. So I can only do that if I have the means and the time to. And I feel like that's really important. You shouldn't just like take on whoever just to, pay the bills and not care about their content, because then like everyone will suffer.
Yeah, 100%. It also comes back to like happiness too, right? Like, if you add the other client, like, you're just that much busier, you're running around more. Like,
exactly.
that's fair. And then you mentioned your podcast there, and I really do want to talk about that now. Can you kind of tell everyone what it's about?
For sure. I love how you say about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
See,
Canadian.
I don't even notice it, you know? Like,
my podcast is, it's about millennial dating in New York. And it's called We Met at Acme. And we basically every episode I interview a different person who's had a different experience with dating in the city. Whether it's a good experience, a bad experience, but it's usually a unique experience. And I kind of act as like a big sister figure to a lot of the, people who've just graduated and are moving to wherever it is and are seeing how the dating world actually goes and having these harsh realities of like, okay, so if I'm dating someone, they're also dating other people, and what's ghosting, and what's this, and, why did this person break up with me, but they're watching my story every day, and just navigating those waters.
yeah. And then Acme's a restaurant in the city, right?
Acme's a restaurant and bar in the city. I usually go to the bar, but the restaurant's great too. And I thought of the name because it's just a really cool place to go. They've always had great music, and I've met a few people there. Nothing that turned into anything, but it's just clear that it's a dating podcast because you met somewhere,
Yeah, no, that's fair. And then, so what I was really curious was, where do you find your comfort level when you bring a guest in to talk about like all these different subjects? Because some of them are like, for lack of a better word, sensitive subjects that people don't usually like to talk about.
Right.
Which is probably part of the reason why I think it's so popular, is because you're talking about all these things that no one really wants to talk about, but they do at the same time,
For sure. I think it's just creating a really comfortable environment for them. Like we're in my apartment on my couch, and like that's the same environment I create with the people I interview. And I make them forget, or try to make them forget, that they're, on a recording that might be heard by thousands of people, and more so that it's just a conversation with a friend. And I usually have a connection to the people that come on my podcast, so it's not completely random all the time. And I think that connection and knowing me and something about my own personal life helps them to open up as well. And also sharing about my situation when they're sharing about theirs, it's like not like I'm just taking and taking. I also give.
Yeah, that's fair. So then, like, in terms of the guests you have on, I was curious about how you landed some, like Nick Vial was on your podcast, Corinne, Asa Kira, like you've had a bunch of different people.
For sure. So Nick actually came from a friend of mine. He was dating her at the time, and I was like, can you please ask him to come on my podcast? And she did, and he came on, and it was really great. And he's a really sweet guy, and he actually now has his own podcast, which is cool. Corinne actually came to me. My friend is her PR person and manager, and she was like, I'm in the city with Corinne. Do you want to do your podcast? And I was like, fuck yeah. And Asa Akira came to me through the Pornhub guys. My manager was in touch with them way back when. And we were like, we'd love to interview a porn star. And they were like, how's Asa Akira? And we were like, that's perfect. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you change kind of like your interview style when you're talking to someone with a little bit more celebrity than other?
No, I keep it the same. And ironically, like for the Nick Vial episode, I don't watch The Bachelor. So I didn't know anything really about him before that. And I was like, I don't watch, by the way. Like, tell me about it, And I think it's really important to kind of go in the same way that a listener would go in and have that perspective of like, let's pretend we don't know this person at all, no matter who they are.
That's really cool. Is there a guest that, like, I know it's tough to pick your favorite, but is like a story maybe that referencing the guest that really just blew you away or you did not expect?
For sure. I mean, I don't know how inappropriate this is, but the biggest mind-blowing thing was when a friend of mine was on my podcast, and she just all of a sudden started talking about like squirting and how she does that, and I was like, holy shit, this is really good. Another one that's more PG, my friend came on, and he's like very spiritual, and a really sweet guy, and he started talking about how no one should ever say, "What are we?" in a relationship, but instead say, "This is what I can offer you, and here's what I need from you." Or maybe it's the other way around. Here's what I can offer you, and this is what you can expect from me, something like this. And it was really eye-opening because I think we're so traditional when it comes to those conversations and things. So that was really helpful to learn. And I think, honestly, I learned something with every episode that comes. So that's really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then so you're saying how usually when people hear it, it's just pretty comfortable because they're just on your couch. But you've also done live shows. And I was really curious, like, does the dynamic change when you're doing it in front of an audience?
It really doesn't. Other than that they're there, I think, the only thing that changes is that we're more, like, not desperate for laughs, but we want to be funny because we actually have an audience, as opposed to, like, we're not trying to be funny when we're having a conversation, and if people find humor in it, great, but it's not our intention.
Yeah. And so what all goes into, like, planning a live show?
So planning a live show has a lot of moving pieces. We have to find a venue, and then we have to find sponsors for the event, whether it's like alcohol sponsors or food sponsors, or gift bag sponsors, and we need to get a guest list together, and that's usually something that my intern helps me out with. She's amazing. And that's pretty much it. We need to bring the equipment and usually bring like a Yeti mic like this or a recorder, and make sure the sound is okay, and that's essentially it. And then we open it up to questions at the end, or we do like a mingling thing. We have a mixer coming up on Valentine's Day, which is really exciting. So we'll see.
That's really cool. And then it's like, so turnout, I'm assuming, is always pretty good then?
Yeah, it's really good. We have a really great fan base here in New York, and I'm hoping to have an event elsewhere pretty soon. Yeah,
it's actually something I was curious about because we met at Acme, like, about millennial dating in New York. Does the audience, like, does it look like when you look at your analytics, there's a lot of people outside of the city that listen as well?
For sure. Our second city is LA, and then we have Chicago, and, there's all kinds of people from all over. There's we actually have listeners in Australia and in Africa. People have written in, like, in Russia. So I think there's a little bit of everything, but I would say the most common cities are New York, LA, and Chicago.
Yeah. And then so why podcasts? Like, why not a YouTube show or something else?
Podcast, because I'm not super self-indulgent, and I just don't love, like, putting my face in people's faces, essentially. So I think that the idea of not saying that people who do that are self-indulgent necessarily, it's just like I'm kind of like a one-person show, and I don't want it to be all, like, I just don't want my face everywhere. I like the idea of people kind of listening to me behind a headphone or on the radio, and not doing a face-to-face thing. I mean, that could really change. I could maybe in the future host a TV show or something, who knows. But right now I just like the idea of sticking behind this microphone and not necessarily being judged. Like, for example, I just put pimple cream on, and hopefully no one sees that. And that's the kind of thing where, like, I just want to be able to be myself, and whether or not, you're supermodel or you're disgusting, people are always going to judge you, like, and always have something to say about your personal appearance. So I think it's just like a sensitive thing, to have a YouTube. The comment section is scary. I actually tried uploading one of my videos to YouTube, and no one even watched it. So I'm like,
There's actually something I was going to ask you about, was with, like, your personal Instagram. Like, you said at almost 10,000 followers. So is that something you would try to grow and put the time into, like you have with Don't Expect Salads, or you just kind of let it chill and do its thing?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I have a manager, and he is obsessed with my personal brand, quote unquote. And he's like, you know, you need to post more things on Lindsey Mets, like, which is my personal Instagram. He's like, it's not just about We Met at Acme, you know, it's about both. And I'm like, I'm not gonna like post every day. No one likes that person. And that is my personal brand, to like not post every day. So I think it's different for everyone, but you know, as we said in the beginning, you kind of have to post every day to grow. So it's a twofold.
Yeah. And then I was curious about your strategy when it comes to the podcast Instagram. Like, because just having my own podcast, I'm very curious to see like what you do with yours. Cause I think it's sitting, if I'm right, like 14,000.
Yeah, exactly. I try my best to keep it really organic and original content only. I see a lot of podcasts who repost memes and like, you know, funny things to get a laugh, or are just like posting pictures of themselves posing and they're like, check out our new episode. And I want to give real content. Like if I'm going to have people say, you know, if I'm going to write, check out my new episode, I'm going to do a clip from that episode or something about the guest. But I don't love the idea of just like making it about me and then like, oh, go look at my episode. Like it has to actually have to do with what I'm doing, or, you know, sometimes I'll post about the events that are going on, but it's all We Met at Acme related. I actually posted the first meme that I posted the other night, but it was directly related to the podcast. It was something like, you know, at your wedding, like asking We Met at Acme, because people DM me stuff like this all the time, like, should I say yes or is that desperate, like at your wedding at the altar. And I thought that was funny because like obviously you say yes, but girls ask these things and guys ask these things all the time that I'm just like, oh my god, like the answer's so clear, but you know, here it is.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I actually kind of wanted to go back to like the quote unquote celebrities that you've had on. Did they just come into your apartment and record here? Do you usually have to go and meet them elsewhere?
Yeah, most of them actually came here. Corinne was here, but I was in LA a few months ago, and that's when I did the Nick Viall and this woman Shannon Boudram and like a slew of just LA natives. But I'm sure that if they were in New York, they would have come here. I actually have my friend Carly coming on. Did you ever watch Mr. Robot?
I don't think so.
She played Rami Malek's sister on the show, and she's like, you know, pretty well-known actress, and she's, you know, coming over and we're just shooting the shit. So I think it depends on the person and like how, you know, what their schedule is like.
Yeah. And then your podcast setup is pretty minimal, right?
Yeah, it's really chill. I'm lucky enough to have a producer, so I don't have to do the editing myself anymore, and I just like record it and send it to him and tell him what I want it to be called, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And then so like, you treat We Met as Acme as a business now, right? Like, is that more your focus as opposed to the Lunchbox, Lindsey Lunchbox, or?
I would say it's like 70-30, with 70 being the podcast. I make money off of ad sales, but if you know about podcast ad sales, I mean, you have to have like 100,000 listeners to like really make a sustainable living, I believe. So we're hoping to grow there ASAP, but in the meantime, I'll be doing Lindsey's Lunchbox with it.
Yeah. And then so do you have any tips for like how to go out and get sponsors for your podcast?
Yeah. Honestly, I've been lucky in that I have these producers and it's their job to do so. However, I think that if you know, come up with an elevator pitch for your podcast and you try reaching out yourself, then you never know. But I also think that if you find something, like for example, like what is it called? HubSpot?
Maybe. I don't know.
You know what I'm talking
CRM.
about? Yeah, like
yeah.
a website like that, right? Like might want to sponsor this podcast one day. And something that's really niche to your own podcast, you can reach out to, like, for example, like a lubricant company. I could reach out to and be like, I think you should sponsor my podcast, and they'll be like, great. You know, I just had my friend on who has an underwear line, and he's like, I want to talk to people about sponsoring your podcast, and I'm like, great. Oh, that reminds me, I have to shoot him an email. But so if you can find something that's like niche enough to your own podcast, then it's easy. Or just try to find a producer and let them handle it for you.
Yeah. That's
and
cool.
take a percentage.
And then one thing with your ad reads that I was curious about, you like pretty much just jump in right in the middle of your, like there's no like real commercial, you kind of just jump in right in the middle of the conversation. Like it's pre-recorded obviously, like it's not when you're recording, but I was just curious, like there's no like buffer or anything, you know what I mean? Like
for sure. There's no buffer, and I think that's because if I said like, okay, we're about to say an ad, then people would be like, okay, fast forward, you know? And because I do that when I'm listening to podcasts. And
100%.
And I think it's just like a manipulative way of like not making people realize they're listening to an ad. But I always wonder if there's a better way of doing it. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. So after interviewing all these people, like I was really curious in terms of like your dating expertise. What are some like do's and don'ts when it comes to dating in the world of social media?
Great question. Like really good. Can't wait to share this episode with my followers. You know, we actually did a poll question recently that blew my mind, which was what comes first, saying I love you or your first Instagram together? What do you think the answer was?
That's probably the first, like which comes first is probably saying I love you.
Nope.
Really?
People post their first Instagram way before they say I love you.
Interesting.
Which is a perfect example of how, you know, the pressure on social media, like, enjoy your relationship first, get it to a place that's comfortable, and then post. But because people know how beloved couples on social media are, and, you know, people just want to show off and flex and get validation about their relationship, they often need to show that to the world before it's even been cultivated on their own. And I think that it's really important to keep certain things private still. I mean, it's nice to post a story every now and then or a post about your significant other, but like, for example, it was my boyfriend's birthday yesterday, and I posted a slew of pictures of us, and I captioned it like, you know, happy birthday. Like, I'm going to save the cheesy caption for my, like, for us, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would go out of their way to be like, happy birthday to my light. Like, you've been there for me. Like, when, like, my arm broke, like, you took care of me. Like, you danced with my dad so well. Like, all this, like, stuff. And I'm just like, who's benefiting from this, you know?
Yeah.
It's all so, like, cliche and basic, and you know, I understand why people do it, of course, but, and if your significant other loves it, then great, keep going. But I think, like, the most often the people that need to post about their relationships the most are the ones in trouble in their relationship, usually. And
there's a term I wanted to ask you about that I'd never heard before, but when I was, like, doing some research, I saw an article about you, and this was the first time I'd seen this term, micro-cheating.
Micro-cheating. So micro-cheating is essentially when you disrespect your partner, but you can't accuse them of cheating because it's like just a mini version of disrespect. So it's like, you know, writing like hot on let's say a woman's picture that isn't your girlfriend, or sliding into a guy's DM and like it's almost like kind of like emotionally cheating and having like, you know, a long back and forth with someone, or liking all of your ex's photos. It's just like, it's trashy behavior, but does it warrant a breakup? No, but is it really annoying? Yes. And could it potentially lead to a breakup in the future? Probably. So it's just like that in between, like saying a coworker is really hot, and like, you know, we all do it to a certain extent, but doing it on social media is just not a good idea, I don't think.
Yeah. And then in the first episode of We Met at Acme, you were talking, there's a question I think you asked about dating people with big followings versus small followings.
Yeah.
Is that something you see, like a trend almost, like people are trying to date people with bigger followings?
Yeah, I mean, I actually hear straight guys a lot of the time say like, I want someone who has 200 followers and is private. And it's like the same thing as them being like, I want someone who's a virgin, or like someone who's only slept with one other guy. And it's like, okay, like I get it, and then there's the opposite that's like, I want someone who's got 1 million followers so we can like get free shit and like we can live this influencer life, and I think like maybe just want someone who is a good person and it doesn't really matter how many followers they have. Mm-hmm. I have a friend right now who's dating a girl who's got a lot of followers and like, thousands and thousands, and is an actual influencer. And when he started dating her, we were all kind of skeptical just because of the amount, in the public lifestyle that she lives. And now we all know her, and she's like the sweetest girl ever. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have 200 followers and are private who are not so sweet. So I think in that case, and probably in the reverse, it doesn't really matter the amount of followers. It's like you can't really judge a book by its cover, and right now all of our covers are like our Instagrams.
Yeah. And then another thing that was talked about kind of along the similar lines in the first episode of the podcast was having a ton of followers doesn't necessarily mean you're successful. In society nowadays, people think like if you have more followers, that just means you're more successful than someone that has less followers than you.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. I also think there are people out there who are private and go out of their way to not accept people and don't want more followers than a certain amount. Like, my boyfriend actually refuses to let people that he doesn't know intimately follow him. And so he has a very low number on purpose, whereas I'm public and, whoever wants to follow me can follow along. I think that if you're in the business of social media and it's your career, you should have a certain amount of followers. It's more legit if you probably have over 1,000 followers. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean one thing or another. I think maybe the only like kind of red flag is if you have like 3 followers and you're following like 3,000 people. Like that's like what happened here, that like no one that you're following wanted to follow you back. Mm-hmm. But I would say try not to judge on people's ratio that much. And the people who do really care about their ratio, probably like not as big of a deal as they think. But like I'm a hypocrite because I don't want to be following more than 1,000 people. I always try to keep it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. And then with having a public Instagram, have you ever been like recognized when you're out and about?
It's so funny because I like really hadn't for so long, and only when I did We Met at Acme did people start to recognize me, which is ironic considering it's my voice. Mm-hmm. But I've actually been recognized from my voice before, and it's mostly just like New York City, like it's like friends of friends of friends who will say something. I'll never forget the first time I got recognized from DontExpectSalads, which actually doesn't have my face anywhere. Someone recognized me at a Mexican restaurant and like sent me a few free drinks, and I was so thrilled. But I still like to this day I'm confused about how they figured out what I looked like because I had zero photos of myself. But I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think being recognized from your voice as a podcast has got to be the coolest thing.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool, especially because like I spent my whole life hating my like monotone like deep voice, and now people are like, I love your voice. Well, there's obviously still haters, like people have called me really mean names about my voice, but for the most part support in that corner.
And then a big theme like that you talk about almost in all of your podcasts is astrology. I know nothing about it.
When's your birthday? August
27th.
Ah, you're a Virgo. Okay. You have the same birthday as a guest who came on my podcast named Sam Morrell, who's a comedian.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. How does that affect me? Like, I honestly, like, my knowledge is very limited.
Well, you're very inquisitive, which is perfect for this role. But you are a Virgo, so you're very hard on yourself and others. And most Virgos show their love by like being critical almost and like telling people what they could do better and stuff like that. Because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't care about someone. Virgos are very over analytical. Like you're always in your head, like thinking about a next move or like a past move. You have so many thoughts that like when you're alone with your thoughts, it's like a nightmare almost. Similar to my sign, Libra, which is right after you. But that's just a snippet of your personality because there's a whole chart that you have. So that's your sun sign, and you also have your rising sign and your moon sign and all that stuff. And I never expected it, but astrology kind of became like a big part of our podcast.
That's actually really accurate. It's like,
There you go.
how did you get into astrology then? Like, when did you first start learning about it?
Yeah, it was in college. Like right after the StonrGrlProblem times, my friend came over with a bunch of astrology books. I actually have one of them here. And she was like, you know, we gotta read about this. Like, it's so cool. You have to read about your day. And so I read about September 28th, which is my birthday. And it was just very accurate. And I was like, you know, I had never believed in anything before. And I was like, maybe this is something I should look into. And I started to, and it's never the daily horoscopes that you read in a magazine. Like, I think those are bullshit. But the general personality traits of each sign are pretty spot on. So, yeah.
That's cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about, or a person more specifically, was your dad, because he was your mentor growing up, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of tell me a little bit about him?
So my dad is definitely my mentor. He's awesome. He actually took a business, his father's business, travel agency that was about to go bankrupt, and he turned it into the 7th largest travel agency in America. So he really is just like a hero beyond belief. He's the kind of guy that just does not take failure for an answer. And he is a very big entrepreneurial spirit. He turned this like tiny little travel agency into the first travel agency for lawyers, because he was a lawyer at the time. He just graduated from law school and he hated law. And he found something really niche, and he started working with law firms and doing, you know, the travel for all of them. And it's grown. At the time it was called the Lawyers Travel Service, and now it's called Ovation Travel. And they do, you know, all types of travel, from luxury travel, still lawyers travel, to business travel, and like celebrity travel, and like one-off travel trips, and all kinds of stuff. And part of why he's such a mentor to me is he's always learning, and he never thinks he has the answer. He's always working on himself as a guy, and then also just like his business, and accepting feedback and criticism. He's part of a lot of different like groups, whether it's like groups of men or groups of, you know, female, like male and female entrepreneurs that meet and talk. And he always gives me really sound advice when it comes to like starting a career, and, you know, being persistent and meeting with the right people, and following up. And yeah, that's
awesome. And then I think I'll still like sticking with the mentor theme. You said that having a mentor who believes in you is imperative. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more as to why?
Yeah. And I just want to clarify, I don't know if it's the 7th anymore. It might be like higher up, it might be lower, but the last time I checked, or last time he told me, so just in case he's listening, don't be mad at me, I'll figure out the exact number. It's important to have someone who believes in you, because, you know, it's really easy, at least for who I am, to get down on yourself and say like, you know, I'm not doing anything right, or I haven't accomplished enough, and to compare yourself to others. But when you have someone who believes in you, it's kind of like an anchor saying like, you know, keep going, you got this. And that's who he's been for me. And it's great when it comes from your family, but that's not always the case. So whether it's a friend, or, you know, a coworker, a colleague, it's just really always great to have someone in your corner.
That's awesome. So what's next for you? What do you got coming up?
What is next for me? I'm actually writing a book.
Oh, no way.
And I haven't told anyone that, so that's an exclusive.
That is awesome.
But knock on wood, we haven't found a publisher yet. We also haven't started looking yet, so hopefully that'll turn into something. And I hope to have a column about dating somewhere, some way. and potentially a show later down the road, and just like be this, voice of kind of what you don't want to hear but you need to hear when it comes to dating. And want to keep doing the podcast and growing it to be as big as it can be. And there's so many dating podcasts now, and to just figure out a way to keep our uniqueness and do well in that way. Yeah, it would be cool.
Are you able to tell a little bit about what the book is about, or is it still a little too early?
I'll say it's like He's Just Not That Into You meets The Rules.
Okay.
Which is like basically like the rules of dating meets like, finding out the truth about like the translation of, what they say versus what they really mean.
That's cool. And then, so what are some like really long-term goals that you're thinking about and going after?
Yeah. I kind of touched a little bit on them just now, but I guess like having a show, being able to speak to a wider audience, and, continuing to learn about myself, not take myself too seriously, cultivate really good relationships, and like pass on everything that I learned to people in my life, maybe, have a family eventually, and, have like a good imprint on the world, and a positive one. And, if I have the means to eventually possibly start my own company again, whether it's a bigger version of Lindsey's Lunchbox or maybe podcast related, but definitely want to keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then out of all the content that you put out, what do you hope people take away when they either look at it or watch it or hear it?
I hope they take away a sense of confidence in themselves, and like a sense of hope that no matter what their current relationship status is, like it doesn't define them. And especially for people out there that are single or going through a breakup, like it's so okay, because if I hadn't gone through a breakup, I wouldn't have even created my podcast. And these are the kinds of things that it's uncomfortable because you're growing and like you're becoming something better when you're going through these experiences. But it has to happen. Otherwise, like we wouldn't get anywhere in life. And if we don't experience these bad times, we wouldn't know the good. So like for anyone, that's going through a hard time specifically, just think like it can only get better from here.
That's awesome. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to do like a quick Q&A of just random questions that don't fit.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm going to ask them back to you.
Yeah, of course. First question, what's a show you're binging right now?
Great question. I'm binging Sex Education on Netflix. It's really good. What about you?
How I Met Your Mother right now for the second time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I love it. It's so good.
I haven't really given it a chance, but I'll try.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Next question. What's your favorite app that's not Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram?
CoStar. It's an astrology app that you need to download.
CoStar? Why should I download it?
Because it'll tell you all about your rising sign, your moon sign. It'll basically read you your chart for you. So it'll tell you a little bit about yourself and make you more self-aware.
That's interesting.
What about your favorite app?
Google Podcast. I love it. And like I have Spotify and I could listen to podcasts on Spotify. But I'm weird when I listen to podcasts, and I like to listen to them at 2.5 times the regular speed.
I tried that once, but then I just like couldn't process.
Yeah, I never like. It's weird. Like I could never process at that rate. I couldn't even process at double speed, and then I was at 1.5, and I could, and then I was at a double speed. And there's one time I was listening to it at double speed, and I thought I forgot to turn it to double speed, and I checked it, and I was like, "That's weird." And I put it to 2.5, and now 2.5 is perfect.
Wow.
But Spotify doesn't have that, so that's why I say Google Podcasts.
Right, that's true. What's your favorite podcast?
That's tough.
It's We Met at Acme.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. I also really like My Social Life. That's a good one.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah. But outside of those two, I'd probably have to say Gary Vee's podcast. Like, he's
a boss.
Yeah, 100%. We actually just, like, humble brag here. We got a photo in his office yesterday.
No.
Yeah.
Did you get to catch a glimpse of him?
No, he wasn't there. But no, it was like 10 p.m. And we recorded a podcast there yesterday. And the guy's like, "Do you want to go into his office?" And we were like, "Yes." That was
obviously.
But next question is, who are some creators that you follow that you think people should check out?
That's good. Like content creators, like Instagram influencers.
Yeah.
I really like people who are just like completely honest with their followers about a lot of things. I'm gonna plug my sister on this one. She has a workout Instagram, like a fitness Instagram, but she's actually super honest about every single thing. She's pregnant right now, and she is going through some shit, and she's really open about it. So her Instagram is Healthy Alibi, Healthy ALIBI. So check her out. And I also really like Chrissy Ford. She's a fashion editor, I believe, at Harper's Bazaar, and she's also amazing. And then lastly, I really love Sean King, who is an activist, and he writes and calls attention to all of the, whether it's racism or injustice in general, or all of the bad things that are going on in the world. And it's kind of dark to like have to, see it, but it's really necessary to know what's going on.
That's cool. And in terms of me, I would just say, whenever anyone asks me, I always just plug the people that have come on my podcast, because I just appreciate people taking the time to come on. So whenever I get the opportunity, I really like to shout them out. So right now there's 20 episodes out right now. So
nice.
the podcast Instagram follows everyone that's been published so far, and then as they come out. So it's just a curated list where people can find everyone that's been on the podcast.
Love it. And you reminded me to say that actually my sister and Chrissy are both episodes on my podcast as well, so check them out.
Oh, that's awesome. What music are you listening to right now?
It's a great question. I actually really like this guy who my friend is the manager of. It's like Quinn X.
Quinn 92.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's really good. I just like his voice, and like I don't have to his stuff chills me out. And I'm kind of over like this whole like rave music culture. I like someone with like a tune and a voice and something I can sing along to. I also love Khalid.
Yeah.
He's great. What about you?
Dermot Kennedy right now. He's this guy I think he's from Ireland, and he's really starting to pop. And then there's this kid, what's his name? I think it's Noah or Evan. Let me just check.
Yeah, check. I also love Georgia Smith. She's
British. I've never heard of
She's
her.
She's also really hot.
Noah Kahan.
Noah K.
Kahan, like Kahan.
Okay, I'll check him out.
He's from Vermont, I think, and he's my age, which blew my mind.
Oh, wow.
But no, he's got a couple of songs right now, and they're really good, so that's what I'd recommend.
Love it.
And then I know you've asked me this already, but what are some podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, I love The Daily. I listen to it every day, or I try to. And I love Dr. Death. It's like kind of dark, but it's a podcast about all the fucked up surgeries that happen.
Cool.
Like basically doctors fucking up, and like how easy they can fuck up a life. And the last one I'd recommend is Desert Island Discs, which is a podcast hosted by a woman who works for BBC, and she has a different creator on each episode, and they list 8 songs that they would bring with them on a desert island, and what the songs how the songs relate to their life, and how they have meaning to their life. And I have to shout out to my boyfriend Max for introducing me to that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. As a food blogger, what are some restaurants you'd recommend in New York City?
Great question. I love Bar Pitti. I love Il Cantinori. I'm a big Italian food person. I love J.G. Mellon's for a great burger. For sushi, Momoya, Bond Street. What other cuisines? Oh, Chinese food. I'm really into Chinese food right now. I love 456 Shanghai in Chinatown and Nam Hua. Both great places. And Mediterranean food, Pariali, Shuka, Jack's Wife Frida. There's so many great places in the city. It's like choosing favorite kids. It's so hard. What about you?
There's a burrito place we've ordered a couple times on Uber Eats.
Okay, what's it called?
I don't even know. No, it's like in Jersey. Like that's where we're staying.
Oh, right,
I don't even know what it's called.
Hilarious.
We went to Beck this morning, bacon, egg, and cheese.
Oh yeah, it's
that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Cool.
You
should try those places that I mentioned. Yeah.
Next time we're in the city.
For sure, yeah. Ask me for X.
What are some consistent morning and night routines that you have? If any.
I actually have a bacon, egg, and cheese every morning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from Murray's Bagels on what time? When you leave tonight? We leave right now, so
yeah.
I mean, if you have a second, we're 2 blocks away after this to grab a bagel for the flight. It's so fucking good. I get a bacon, egg, and cheese from there every morning, and what else do I do in the morning? I try to write a gratitude list. It keeps me in a good mood. And at night, I probably watch like a Netflix show before bed, usually. Or I don't know how like inappropriate I should be on this podcast, but like it's always good to like have a release of some kind before bed, whether it's like with your partner or by yourself. I think it's really healthy. And that's kind of it. Like I put on some pimple cream. I'm like, it's not that glamorous.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I'll answer all the questions so you don't have to ask that every time. Just make it easier for you. In terms of, I get up at 6:15 every morning, and then I go to the gym for like an hour and a bit, and then I go home, I make a protein smoothie, and usually like a wrap of some kind. Then I'll go to work. And then in terms of night routine, I don't really have one. I'm trying to come up with a night routine. Like it really varies. I need to come up with something, because if no one stops me, I could work on this podcast all night, editing and stuff.
Yeah.
So same. I think needing to come up with a thing where it's like 10 p.m. I stop and I start getting ready for bed. Whether that be like, I mean, the closest thing to routine is I usually do dishes at like 10 p.m.
Sometimes it's relaxing.
But like, yeah. So. I
went to the gym this week for the first time. I usually go in the afternoon, and I think it might be my new thing. It felt really good.
In the morning? Oh, it's great.
To like work out before eating breakfast.
Yeah.
I thought that it would kill me, but it was actually nice, because then I was starving, and I enjoyed my breakfast more.
Yeah, that's good. No, I love the gym in the morning. Next question, I stole this one from Gary Vee. What's something you're obsessed with? That's like not high level, something like off the wall, specific, random.
I'm obsessed with so many things. I mean, I'm obsessed with astrology. Like, it's like unhealthy. I'm obsessed with Glossier products.
Okay.
Yeah, they are just crushing it. I wish they had products for men, because you guys would love whatever they could make for you, because they're amazing. And I'm obsessed with therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you? Oh.
That's okay. You can ask if you want to.
I'm obsessed with asking what about you.
These mics. Like, I used to have different ones, and it was not a good quality unless you're like this far away.
Right.
So having these where they can pick you up from like
they pick up
comfortable
everything.
distance.
Yeah.
It's definitely these. Like, it was awesome. So.
Love it.
And then I guess you could count the thing I downloaded, so I can use 2 at the same time.
Great.
Next question. Where are we? You're going to dinner, and you can take 3 people. They can be anybody from any point in time. They can be dead or alive. Who would you take to dinner?
Obviously, you guys.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
My boyfriend.
There we go.
I mean, not no, but I don't feel like that's a good enough answer. I would probably take Amy Winehouse. I would take... Are we all at the same dinner together, or different times? Oh, okay, so let's make it awkward here. I would take Amy. I love her music, and there's so much more that we didn't like really get to know about her. I think she might have had your birthday. She's a Virgo.
Okay.
I would take my grandma, who passed when I was in 4th grade. She was an icon. She's actually a Virgo too. This is getting interesting. It's going to be a Virgo only table. And the last person I would take is probably Obama, because he's just like good vibes. He'll just like make it fun, and I could finally get to know him on like a personal level, you know, and steal him from Michelle. Just kidding.
I would take Gary Vee, just because he's been like someone that I've been watching for the last couple of years. He's very like inspirational to me. Casey Neistat, I think there's a lot to learn from that guy. Yeah. And the last one would be Philip DeFranco. I don't know if you know Philip DeFranco.
I don't.
He's out of LA. He's had a YouTube show forever, and I've been watching him since I was like 15. So it's been like 6 years. It's like over a quarter of my life I've watched him pretty much every single day. So it'd be really cool to sit down and talk to him.
That is very cool. I actually have to change. Sorry, Obama, I love you. I know you're listening. I have to change him to actually a Virgo, so it's all tables of Virgos. And Rachel Ray would be my last guest.
Okay.
Because she's got such a great energy, and I want to know more about her.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, there's so many. There's so much advice that I've been given. And I actually said this on one of my podcasts, but the best advice is that you need to really, the most used advice that I always go back to all the time whenever I'm like, you know, having a moment, is that you really need to, like, you have to be okay before taking care of anyone else. And that has so many different meanings. Like, you have to be mentally stable. You have to be happy in your career. You have to be, you know, you have to give yourself some self-care. Like, you have to be 100% happy with yourself before you can be with anyone else, be anything to anyone else, be there for anyone else. Because if not, then it's just piles and piles of resentment. And like, we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of me, it's just one word. And again, it's a Gary Vee thing. I talk about him probably too much, but it's just the word and. And like, whenever you're complaining about something, and what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, either do something about it or stop complaining about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I hate my job. And? Like, what are you doing about it? You know what I mean?
I like, if I ever somehow meet Gary Vee, I'm going to be like, I know you're a super fan, and you have to go on his podcast.
I appreciate that. That would be awesome. What's one thing about you people wouldn't expect?
Great question. I'm really good at starting drama in my relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. I think people think I'm like super chill and like I give advice, but like I'm not perfect, and like we all have our shit, and like I live for the drama sometimes. It's terrible, but like you gotta be real, you know? And that's definitely something. But honestly, I don't know how surprised people would be because I tell them that. I'm so open. Surprising. You go, and then if something comes up that's better than that, I'll give it.
I probably should skip this question because I have no idea. I'm trying to think of something on the fly here that about me people wouldn't expect. Because it's hard when I think of like, is it people that I know? Like, I haven't even thought of like the parameters of this question.
Yeah. Something about me that people don't know. I guess people don't know this, but I don't smoke weed now.
Okay.
Which is why it's so funny that you brought up StonrGrlProblem. I stopped smoking like pretty recently.
Oh yeah? How come?
I just wanted to have like a clear mind and be more present with everyone and with my emotions.
That's fair. I thought of something.
Okay, let's hear it.
I don't drink coffee.
I don't either.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people, like when I'm like, yeah, I get up at 6 o'clock and I go to the gym, and they're like, oh, you must like drink a lot of coffee.
Right.
And it's like, never. Never. Second last question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just...
second last question.
Yeah.
What's one thing so important everyone should know?
About the world?
Yeah, just about anything.
Well, since I do a dating podcast, and I want to help people with dating, if you meet someone that you like when dating, keep dating.
That's cool. That's pretty simple advice.
Yeah, because it's like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You never fucking know. Like, just because you like someone doesn't mean they like you, and you will just come off as super desp.
Cool. I think in terms of one thing everyone should know is, if you put your mind to something, like, you could really accomplish it. I think, like, we've been talking like over the course of this trip, we started planning this 2 months ago, And just through Instagram, we were able to get to here right now. We were able to get to this guy's like fancy rooftop in Manhattan at like sunset. We got into Gary Vee's office, like through the powers, like I don't want to say specifically social media, but like you can really do so much if you really just try.
Yeah, persistence is key. As actually someone now, like on not the other side, definitely not yet, but I do have people who reach out to me. They want to like, grab coffee, and if it were up to me, I'd grab coffee with every single person in the world. But I can't always do that, so I'll try to get like to make something happen. But then if they fall off, like that is what it is. But if they're persistent and they're always trying, we're getting that coffee. So yeah,
That's awesome. Last question. I like to kind of flip the script.
Okay.
What's one question you want to know the answer to about anything?
I could be dumb and ask like, why do we drive on the parkway and park on the driveway? Or I'll think of a real question. Can you go first?
I can if I think of a question. Like these are the questions that I've never really thought about myself, right? One question. Just from like a high level, will I meet Gary Vee?
That's a good question.
That's just my...
How about, will America ever be the same again after Trump?
Interesting. Okay.
The same as in like what point?
Obama era.
Okay.
Like we were getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I've just exercised because my mind has worked so hard.
That's good. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
I just want to give you the floor, plug everything you got. Where can the people find you?
Yeah. Thank you. People can follow us at We Met at Acme on Instagram. My personal is LINDZMETZ, which is Lindsey Mets. My social media company is at Lindsey's Lunchbox and LindSey'S.com. And my podcast is We Met at Acme, so you can search for us in iTunes, in Spotify, on like this Lisbon site. Just Google it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you once again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. This is great.
And I just want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. Whether you've listened the entire way through or you've only listened to bits and pieces, I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out. Do me a favor, go follow Lindsey, go follow We Met at Acme. I'll make sure everything is linked in the show notes down below. And if you'd like to follow me, you can find me at the Jacob Kelly on both Twitter and Instagram. And if you'd like to follow the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at MySocialPod and on YouTube at MySocialLife. Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We'll talk soon.